Welcome. We are so glad to have you here with us tonight for the Module 5 of our Training as Action series on citizenship and human rights in the age of disinformation. We are very, very fortunate to have two amazing co-facilitators and leaders in our field of human rights education with us tonight. Nina Grosch from the Woven Teaching Program out in California, and Felisa Tibbetts, who is a wonderful scholar and human rights, well, she runs Human Rights Education Associates as well as is on the faculty at Utrecht University. And I think maybe in New York at the present time. And they will tell you a little bit more about their work as they go through this current presentation. So without further ado, I will hand it over to them. And again, as I mentioned, this is being recorded. So thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Christy. Thank you for inviting us to participate in this webinar, and appreciating those of you who are joining tonight, especially those of you who are teaching or working full-time. It's not easy to find the time and space. So Nina and I, along with Christy, have worked on what we think is an interesting program, informative and engaging, but I guess that time we'll know at the end of the presentation by the Q&A how well we've accomplished that. If you could go to the next slide, Christy. And many thanks, Christy, who is doing all of the work in terms of the slides and all the other links to videos that you'll see. So if you could just go ahead and if you don't mind, Christy, just put out all the thematic overviews of the webinar. So Nina and I, we're both going to introduce ourselves. Nina is not a silent partner. She's going to be coming in a little bit later, but we are going to but we're going to start with with you.
I'm so sorry.
Is it working?
Oh, hold on one second. We might have to reshare.
Otherwise, I can just
Yes, I'm going to try and just reshare it. 1 second.
Okay. And if it doesn't work, it's no problem. I know. Okay. So let me just go ahead and tell you what we're going to be working on today. And then Christy, we can just go to, oh, here it is.
There we go. Okay, here we go.
It's coming up.
Thank you.
It's coming up. Okay, that's good. So Nina and I are going to try to cover a lot of ground. So that means on the one hand, hopefully we'll keep your interest, but it means we're not going to be maybe able to go into as much depth on some things that you might like. So, but we're hoping that at least some of what we're presenting is really closely linked to your interests, and we'll have some time for interaction, and we're also going to be sharing resources. So hopefully you'll be able to walk away with more to think about and to research if you'd like after this webinar. So the first part of this webinar, I'm actually going to be doing a kind of presentation. It's really just a presentation on artificial intelligence and human rights, and with some kind of overview of some of the human rights implications of using artificial intelligence, not just the negative, but also the positives, because there are absolutely some positives for using AI in terms of human rights work and human rights education. And then I'll pass the floor over to Nina, who will go into some detail about algorithms and bias. I'm really interested in her work in this area, and I think you'll find it also very informative. She's also then going to talk about youth-centered actions to combat dis and misinformation, which may be of special interest for those of you working with young people. And then it comes back to me, and I'm going to talk just a little bit about digital citizenship and ways to think about helping our learners to be kind of, responsible digital citizens. And this is going to flow directly also from Nina's work. So a little bit about myself. As Christy said, I'm Felisa Tibbetts. I am based in New York City. I am the chair in human rights education at Utrecht University. I'm also adjunct assistant professor of political science at Columbia University, where I teach the human rights senior seminar. So I have a lot of that sort of academic stuff behind me, but I am mostly a civil society person. Christy and I met eons ago when we were both working in the civil society sector, and that's really where my heart is. And so I'm also coming at this from my own experience, my ongoing experience working in programming and resource development, etc. So next slide, please. We thought it might be a good idea to begin this webinar by actually getting taking your pulse in terms of two things. One, how enthusiastic you are about artificial intelligence, and your experience in using artificial intelligence, because there's a spectrum for both those things. And of course, there's no correct answer. So if you can, please go. And I think, Christy, if you could put that link also in the link that I shared earlier today, if you could, or I can maybe put it right in the chat box. Let me do that. So I'm going to put in the chat box now what we think is going to be a link right to Mentimeter. And that's where you can actually, thank you, Christy, where you can actually fill out, let me just get on Mentimeter and present. So there you should be able to, you find two questions where you can indicate your level of enthusiasm from very low to very high, and your level of experience, also using AI, very low, very high. So hopefully this will work, and we'll get a sense of your where you're coming from. I think it's helpful for all of us. So. Funny enough, I don't know if anyone's filling it out. I assume some people are. I don't see it yet.
My apologies for interrupting, but it appears that we can't click on it.
Oh, no, no problems for it. Okay. So we were wondering if there was going to be issues here. I am so sorry about that. I'm looking at the Mentimeter, but I'm not seeing anything. So let's do this. Let's just keep it simple. And so that we can keep moving along. And oh, I see. Oh, very low, very high.
You have to log in.
Okay, Christy, could you go to the next slide? There's a QR code, and people could do that. The next slide, just this is a backup. There is a code, but if you could just go to the next slide, and there's a QR code, and you guys can just use this, and hopefully that will work. And if not, we'll just do this the old-fashioned way. It's no problem.
We're trying to do a good tech options.
We are.
See how it works.
Okay. Is the QR code working for folks?
Yeah, the QR code works. I think both options just ask you to log in to the actual system to post your response to the questions.
Okay.
Actually, that's not the case. I logged in on the first version and it still is view only. So it looks like you have to turn it on to take answers.
Okay, so let me
on the QR code. I don't know. Maybe it logged you in and you could use it, but I couldn't still.
Oh, I see, editors. Okay, I'm gonna make it so that anybody can edit it. Maybe that's the solution. And I'm so sorry, we don't want to spend time on this, honestly. One more try, and otherwise we just put in the chat box. Did that make a difference, everybody? What I just did, I just changed everybody to editors. And no, it's not working. Okay, I'm sorry about this fuss, and so much for that. Didn't work. Let's just say, if you don't mind, to let me just do this one by one. Are you there? Okay. Okay.
So I have the questions on the screen now, those two.
That's great. Okay. Yeah. So I'm don't seeing myself in here, which is weird, but oh, now I hear it. Okay, great. So let's just do this real quick. How enthusiastic on a scale of 1 to 5? Yes. Thank you. Somebody's already organized this, Kelly. Thank you. How enthusiastic would you say about using AI on a scale of 1 to 5, just to get enthusiasm, experience? Okay, we can do both. Enthusiasm, experience, 2, 3. Thank you, guys. We could have done this, I guess, at the outset. Enthusiasm for experience. Okay, so Garth is pretty enthusiastic and experienced. Enthusiasm and experience, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 5, and 5, Desi. So one thing I'm observing here is that for the most part, people's level of enthusiasm and experience is pretty closely related, right? Not entirely, but sort of. So that's very interesting. And obviously you're here in this webinar, so you are certainly interested. Let me see. Thank you for enthusiasm 7. Wow. Okay. Good. Thinking outside the box and experience 5. Okay, so we do have a range, I would say, across those of you who are in this webinar around your enthusiasm and experience. And I think wherever you are in your experience, oh, I was writing out of 10. Ashley, we just thought you were super enthusiastic. Wherever you are, we hope to be enriching your knowledge. Because my own experience with AI, and I should tell you, I didn't do this before because Nina works a lot in this area. But for myself, I'm primarily working in just straight up human rights education. But I also became very, very curious about AI and human rights and also the implications for education. So I've been kind of self-taught in terms of trying to understand AI better in its role in potential positive and also critically in education, and have worked on some curriculum that will be open access in about a month or so on AI, human rights, and education. So that's something that I think we can share later after this webinar is over and it's publicly available. So I'm also been, I was sort of driven by enthusiasm, but not a lot of use myself. And I just want to encourage all of us and recognize that we all continue to learn because so much is changing all the time. What was it? Last week was DeepSeek with the Chinese. I don't know if you tried to go on that. I tried that out myself. It was interesting to see what was the same or what was different. There's just things happening literally every month around AI that have implications for our use. Some of it encouraging, some of it really concerning, and but we all have to sort of be minds on and hands on for this. But AI is here to stay, that's for sure. And we all know that it's presenting an incredible opportunity and challenge for our work and for humanity. And you're in this webinar because you obviously recognize that. And although it does have immense potential, at the same time, there are, of course, risks, and we need to basically have critical literacy when it comes to using AI. And it's kind of an extension of the kind of digital literacy that we've needed to be conscious of for a decade now, right? You probably, if you're teachers, have already been working with your students on thinking about how to use social media in a conscientious way, how to protect your data. So this is just kind of an extension of that. But because AI works so much more quickly, so much exponentially, we have so many the opportunity to send information out so quickly. It's a little bit different than just thinking about digital literacy in the past. So yeah, if you could go ahead, Christy, thank you. So the field of education is one of the first sort of domains where AI sort of came out as something to be considered. And that's because we already had schools and universities thinking about ways to be using AI. So it's a high stakes arena because when we think about collecting data from our students and those privacy issues, it really affects a lot of people. When we think about teachers using AI for curriculum development or for record keeping, potentialities there, but also issues of concern related to privacy. We'll get into some of those. And also students, of course, one of the first questions we have as educators is, will there be plagiarism? And how can I ensure that my students don't take advantage of AI and misrepresent their work? I mean, so lots of concerns about AI's use in education. And because we do have companies also very interested to promote the use of AI in schools, there's also a kind of rush to schools to help them engage in the acquisition of software and apps that are ultimately AI driven, that needs to also be considered with very carefully. Next slide, please. So a little bit of a definition. This would be for those of you who maybe are on the scale of 1 to 2 in terms of level of experience using AI. There's different kinds of AI. Narrow AI is the kind that you've most likely been exposed to. It focuses on performing specific tasks like if you have a smartphone or an iPhone and you use Siri, it recognizes your voice. I have Google Nest. I use Spotify on it. That's AI. If you use Duolingo, that's AI. So AI has probably been around you already. And narrow AI, which is what you're most likely familiar with, is basically related to generative AI, which is where you have the Chat GPT, where you can ask questions and generate text or images or videos, but it's prompt driven. Now, strong AI, we're not quite there yet. I don't know if Nina's going to address it, but strong AI is where we're not yet. But those are the concerns, that we would end up with AI that actually is not driven by our prompts, but is somewhat independent and potentially working independently of us, and is taking decisions potentially as well that we may or may not sort of agree with. We're not there yet, but I think those are some of the concerns of people that are really familiar with AI and the future, and why there's also an interest in making sure we have guardrails and clear principles for not only our use for using AI in schools or higher education or in our NGOs, but also guardrails for those who are developing AI, the companies themselves. So just to say as an aside, those institutions or organizations that are developing kind of principles for how to use AI might be your own schools or universities that have had to elaborate AI policies and use, what's acceptable, what's not, what's going to be left to the teacher or instructor. But there's also AI governance that's coming from governments, not yet at the US federal level, but the European Union, for example, has a really excellent AI guidance. And there's also guidance that has been developed by companies themselves for internal development of AI. So it's still a quite fragmented and diverse field in terms of governance, which is why it's so important for you all to have AI literacy from a critical human rights perspective. Okay, next slide, please. So here are some of the ways that AI is being used in education already. And maybe these are some ways in which you're also already using AI, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or other apps that are out there. You can be using it for curriculum development. It's not recommended that you let AI develop your whole lesson, but you might get some ideas. I've used AI to get some ideas as well. You might be using AI to help, again, create some ideas for how to assess learners. So it can be like a tool. The key thing here is that it's at your discretion, that you draw on AI for ideas, for your lessons, for your assessment. In some cases, AI might present record keeping that's useful for you in terms of monitoring student performance. Sometimes AI is being used for grant development. Sort of questionably, sometimes it's also used to review admission applications. This is one of the concerns about AI being used also to screen resumes for job apps in general. Personalized learning systems is how students are sometimes using AI, which is one of the really positive pluses for using AI in the schools. At least that's what I understand. And students may also be using it for research and writing. Again, maybe to help with the research, again, you as an educator would have to be really clear how students could use AI or not when they're doing any research, or if they're doing writing, maybe using AI to check their grammar, but not to do the actual writing. All kinds of nuances here. But AI is definitely being used in formal education. And when we get to the Q&A part, maybe you can share some of your own experiences, positive, but also concerning in your own school or NGO setting, wherever you might be working. Okay, next slide, please. So I just want to very briefly, before I turn actually the floor over to Nina, talk a little bit about some of the human rights at stake with AI. And this is kind of the work that I was doing myself last fall, trying to understand, if we were to look critically at AI and its use, what does there's some ethical guidelines that are out there, but what about from the human rights perspective? We're here through HRE USA, so I think we're human rights people. So what kind of lenses are we offered through looking at AI through human rights? So I'm just going to go through these pretty quickly. And if you are interested in a bit more detail on this, I'll just tell you that I worked on this with some graduate students last year, and it's going to be, the article that we wrote is going to be published, I think, like this month, and it's going to be open access. So if you are interested, my email address is at the end of this presentation. Just let me know, and I'm happy to give you a link to the paper that really presents these in greater detail. So the right to education. So again, individualized learning programs, that is like, AI programs that help students who need more help, or students who are maybe gifted and need more challenge. These are systems that are set up where they basically work with the learners. They get the learners' responses. They have and they interact with the learner to provide, to basically tutor. It's like a tutoring system. And again, I'm not going to go into details about the personalized learning systems, but it's considered to be an asset in terms of supplementing what's already happening in the classroom, whether it's higher ed or schools, individualized learning programs. So that's considered one of the pluses. It's like kind of like Duolingo, but of course used in the schools, it's much more elaborate. And again, teachers are still in charge. They still are looking to see how students are using the systems. They're looking at the results of their engagement with the tutoring program. So that's a plus. But on the concerning side, we have unequal access to AI in schools, right? Just like not every school has access to the internet, even though in the United States it's often the case. Still, we don't always know if, not every school necessarily does, or not every classroom would provide students with access to a laptop or a computer where they might be using a personalized learning system and other things. Or students go home and they don't have access to a good computer at their house. They may not be able to use AI for homework or in any other way that might be helpful to them. So you have here a revisitation of our longer concerns about lack of access to the internet and how that might impede access to also AI technology, both in the classroom and at home. And this is actually important, not only because if you believe, some of you are really enthusiastic about AI, so it might, and if you are enthusiastic, you found really great ways to use it, at least for yourself and your teaching, maybe also for your students. So if you are a believer in AI and you believe that it helps your students learn, then the issue here is unequal access to quality education. And that's a concern from a human rights perspective. The other concern here is that if we think, and I believe it's the case, that AI is our future, and a lot of jobs in the future are going to be linked up with knowledge of AI, then those students who are not exposed to artificial intelligence and are not familiar with it may be disadvantaged in the workplace moving forward. So just in terms of the instrumental role of education in preparing people for the workplace, that's also a concern, that they would not be as well positioned as others who have access to AI to be able to navigate AI in their future jobs. Okay, right to equality. This is a point that Nina's going to go into a lot on the issue of algorithms. I will just tell you that if you know anything about AI, you know that basically generative AI is grabbing information off the web. So it's what is already out there. And so if there is information that's not out there, it doesn't get reflected in the pool of information that that these AI apps draw on. And so, for example, if you are a member of a group that does not have regular access to AI, then it may be that your points of view, your data is not going to be taken into consideration. Now, this seems to be a kind of contradiction to the issue of privacy, but bear in mind that the AI is out there already grabbing data from across the web, right? And one of the graduate students I worked with last year is Native American, and she pointed out, and she was really interested in this topic because she said on a lot of reservations, they don't necessarily have good access to the internet. That means that Native American learners and instructors would be underrepresented in the data pool that AI is drawing on, further minimizing not only their access, but also their presence in the AI data pools. So these are also very important things to keep in mind in terms of right to equality, in terms of who is using it and consequently who's not using it and how it affects what's out there. And a lot of this is not transparent. So the right to equality in this respect, what data is being drawn on. Some of the app programs are really good about telling you where their sources are. I think it might be Gemini. There's some research apps you can use that's AI based that, you know, they actually tell you where the sources are coming from. So it's not just generating text, but others just generate text and you don't know where it comes from, where the sources are. And in that case, you know, you won't be able to discern, for example, how inclusive that data is. Not that the other, you know, with some listing of resources, you would be able to also, but at least you'd have some information about that. So this lack of transparency surrounding the internal logic of AI systems and the information you get is something that would camouflage, or it would make it obscure the possibility of your understanding some of these underrepresented groups in the data that you're pulling on. Okay, right to privacy, and this is very, I think, self-evident. You know, data that's getting collected, it's getting, I mean, we know if any of us who are still on Facebook, that data gets collected and it generates advertising or other kinds of threads on Facebook. You're probably familiar already with these concerns about the ways in which our data is being shared, and so issues of privacy has been ongoing for some time. And remember that, you know, in terms of these algorithms, which Nina's going to talk about, we can't control those. I mean, sometimes we can opt out, but generally speaking, data is being collected so much, our consumer behavior, our social media behavior, our online activities, surveillance technologies, all this data is being kept, and we cannot contest these necessarily. So in education as well, there's now some pushback to allow students, for example, to opt out of having some of their data collected by the schooling system. This makes it more difficult if you're an administrator or a teacher and you need that data. But part of the solutions for the lack of privacy is to put some of those that power back into the hands of learners and maybe educators to have options to opt out of some of the data that would otherwise be normally collected for them. Bias and discrimination, I talked a little bit about that already, so I'm just going to move on to right to work and livelihood. I've already alluded to this, but I have to tell you, there's a statistic I came across I was very surprised by. The World Bank research indicates that up to 2/3 of the jobs in the global South and roughly 14% of the jobs in OECD countries, which means also the United States, could become automated as AI matches and exceeds human capabilities. Now, I don't know why that number is higher for the global South and the global North, but the point is that AI will not only potentially substitute what's currently done by humans now, but it certainly will be a supplement and an integrated part of the workforce. And so there's concerns about structural unemployment as AI takes over some of these jobs. But again, the key thing is that in terms of education, that again, this concern that teachers would be substituted by AI, no, that's not going to happen. But the teachers, who are teachers, need to understand AI, how to harness it so that you can improve your own, quality of teaching in the classroom. And also recognize what it is that you do best that AI can do otherwise. Like the idea of critical thinking, it's been AI, even personalized learning systems in the classroom has been critiqued because it's kind of logical, it's automated, it works better with things like logics like science and math. Doesn't work as well for assignments that are more creative in nature or requires critical thinking. So even inside the classroom, there's certain subject matters that work better with AI in terms of personalized learning systems. And again, I'm not really concerned that teachers are going to be substituted, but in contexts where there's already in some country contexts where there's a concern about the quality of teaching, where they already have moved into tablet-driven learning and teaching and learning, where teachers have relatively little autonomy. There is some potential in some contexts that AI will continue to basically run the classroom and be implemented by teachers without their critical oversight of what's happening. So right to freedom of thought and expression. Here we move into very briefly concerns about digital platforms, harmful content. You know, the longstanding concerns about hate speech and the sort of the tension between freedom of expression in digital platforms and social media, and at the same time the potential for censorship that is maybe not due to hate speech, but other kinds of censorship that happens automatically through AI. So again, this kind of tension between free expression and other kind and getting information that might be in fact hateful and harmful versus the other side of that, which is censorship that's happening through AI. And which would preclude our having access to full information. So it's a kind of tension there, almost a contradiction. And finally, the last point on right to democratic participation. If we believe that democratic participation is contingent upon our having access to different points of view, not being siloed in our Fox News or in our what would be a progressive New York Times maybe bubbles with our information, although I actually trust the New York Times, I have to say that, then it undermines democracy and that notion of contemplation and deliberation. So this means that the right to democratic participation might be ultimately undermined by algorithms generated by AI and applied in our social media accounts. Then again, that puts us in sort of echo chambers and erodes civil discourse. So I threw a lot at you. I hope that was interesting. I think that Nina, I think you're up, and I'm really looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And just to clarify, I am not an AI expert, but I'm learning with everyone, and that was so interesting. But my background really is in working with young people, working with human rights education, and lately in getting students, or helping students, I should say, understand their own responsibility for digital citizenship, for upholding democracy, etc. So my name is Nina Simone Grach, and I work at Woven Teaching. And Woven Teaching is sort of the programmatic educational arm of Woven Foundation. And we provide free and accessible lessons. So we have lots of lessons on lots of different topics, all free and downloadable. We have online and in-person workshops. We offer historical and contemporary perspectives and global connectedness and real-life examples of human rights defenders in action. So it's a really interesting model, and I don't think it's a very common model. But so our foundation funds certain groups around the world who are doing human rights education. That's not the only thing they fund, but that's what I'm involved in. So it's so interesting to see what human rights education looks like in Rwanda, or what it looks like, in El Salvador. All of these places, obviously very, very different, and yet all of Woven Teaching's materials and resources always sort of use the 30 articles of the UDHR as our North Star. It's all based in that. And so obviously those are global ideals. But we always say that we work across cultures, across geographies, across chronologies, again, hoping to make connections for young people so they can find either individuals or movements or historical human rights defenders, and get engaged and become active. Yeah, so that's us. And then if you can go to the next one, please. So as I said, we write a lot of curriculum, especially during COVID. We spent a lot of time at our desks writing, and we tried very hard to have things that were contemporary, and then historical, and then US based, and then international. But these are really the three kind of centerpieces of what we do. So on the left, you see human rights are for everyone. And this was actually based out of a project in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where some of our partners were doing a youth leadership program and really thought that using the UDHR and then specific examples and applications was the way to go. So we helped work on that. And now it's being used by a lot of governments in East Africa. And it's really expanding. It's very exciting. And again, happy to send you links or even hard copies if you wanted them. And then on the right is stages of genocide. So we also do a lot of work about examples of genocide. This particular resource uses the 10 stages that Professor Gregory Stanton laid out, which are the 10 stages of genocide, which is a really useful model. And then we use different case studies. So how did this look during the Cambodian genocide, or how did this look during the Holocaust? And then also asking students, where could people have interrupted this? Where could people have stood up or made a difference? Or could they have? All of these questions are part of that. So those two, and then defending democracy is, yeah, go ahead to the next one. Thank you. Defending democracy is our newest piece. So I'm sure many of you have read On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder. He has been everywhere lately because his work is so prescient and so applicable, sadly. So this book was written as a response to the 2016 election. And so he had sort of these 20 lessons. So the first one, let's say, is don't obey in advance. And it's all about fighting authoritarianism and protecting democracy. So with don't obey in advance, he has examples from, the Soviet Union about companies before they were even asked to implement policies would do so. And obey in advance, I can't even tell you how many texts and calls I'm getting from friends and colleagues saying, wow, this work is really relevant right now, because so many people are talking about how tech companies, DEI policies at big companies, I mean, all of that, even before it was, proposed, people were obeying in advance, as they say. So using this framework, we thought it would be really useful to break it down and offer some, yes, and the graphic novel version is so good. And I know Professor Snyder actually thinks it's a much better book. And he feels like the illustrations really add a lot to it. We use this because we figured it would be cheaper for teachers and easier, but certainly that's another great resource. Anyway, so we take if you just go back just real quick. Yeah. So really it's about defending democracy. And I think what the main goal is, we were at NCSS together, some of us from HRE USA, talking to teachers and young people about their experience with the election. It had just been the election, it was before the inauguration, and overwhelmingly hearing either students are very hopeless, feeling very overwhelmed. And of course, this is not everyone. This is, trends. And many people are feeling incredibly cynical. And that, I think that went for teachers and for young people. And unfortunately, as we know, these are all tactics of authoritarian governments to overwhelm people, to create a sense of hopelessness, a sense of futility. So how do we fight back? With informed action. So, having students examine what these issues really are, what they feel is important, and then what are some small actions that they can take, again, either individually or collectively. And these actions aren't for superheroes. These are for regular students. I just want to make sure yeah, and so part of this is digital citizenship. He talks about that a lot. And so this next piece, next slide, please. There we go. Thank you. So I'm talking less about algorithms algorithms and impact and more about sort of how they work to guide. This is a good video to use with young people about, exactly how TikTok's algorithm figures you out. But this is from our lesson, and it's be kind to our language, expand your worldview. So again, the sense of everyone being in an echo chamber and social media platforms just increasingly taking you down rabbit holes. And then, as we all know, particularly the more heightened emotions, the more angry, the more dramatic, get the most attention. So we're really driving young people often into these kind of dangerous holes of the information they're getting, without realizing how this is all happening, and that it's happening obviously so quickly. So this is a very long video, but I thought we could watch a little bit and pause and have a couple questions, and see how that goes.
Okay, has anyone else noticed that your For You page has been a little too accurate lately? It hasn't been things that I'll Google or I talk about. It's been thoughts.
TikTok knows everything about us.
Hold up, don't scroll. Let me ask you something first. Can someone please explain how this algorithm works?
TikTok users often wonder how the world's fastest growing social network seems to know them so well.
TikTok's secretly listening to us while we're watching videos? I don't know.
The answer to how this app gets to know you so intimately is a highly secretive algorithm, long guarded by TikTok's China-based parent company, ByteDance.
TikTok has been so successful in terms of implementing their algorithms.
TikTok's algorithm can influence the thinking of US youth.
To understand how it knows users so well, the Wall Street Journal created over 100 automated TikTok accounts, or bots, that watched hundreds of thousands of videos on the app. We also spoke to current and former executives at the company. Officially, the company says that shares, likes, follows, and what you watch all play a role in what TikTok shows you. We found that TikTok only needs one of these to figure you out: how long you linger over a piece of content. Every second you hesitate or rewatch, the app is tracking you.
I just want to quiet the noise.
Through this one powerful signal, TikTok learns your most hidden interests and emotions, and drives you deep into rabbit holes of content that are hard to escape. Made to light up the room.
This should not be part of.
Remember the first time we came here?
Yeah. Made to bring out.
Okay, I have a feeling that's a 30-second.
Can you skip the ad? Is
Just
that
skip the ad, Christy? It's on the bottom
on
right.
the very right? Yeah, on the bottom there.
Oh, sorry, I think my window is over it. I got it. Okay, thank you.
My happy guy. Oh, just a happy.
The TikTok experience starts the same way for everyone. Open the app and you'll immediately see an endless string of videos in your For You feed. Take this new user, a 24-year-old from Henry County, Kentucky. TikTok starts by serving the account a selection of very popular videos vetted by app moderators. Is this person religious?
Because I still have a purpose and you still hold a plan for my life.
Do they want to participate in viral dances? Are they feeling down lately?
Just remember, I loved you once, and that love goes for a friend, family, or any relationship.
What TikTok doesn't know is that the 24-year-old from Kentucky isn't a person at all. It's one of the bot accounts programmed by the Wall Street Journal. Let's call it Kentucky 96. We set up these accounts to understand how TikTok figures out your unexpressed interests. We assigned each bot a date of birth and an IP address, which told TikTok their location. None were given a gender. We gave each bot or user interests, but those interests were never entered into the app. The only way our users expressed their interests was by rewatching or pausing on videos with related hashtags or images. Some were into extreme sports. Others were interested in forestry, or dance, or astrology.
I'm not the babysitter, I'm not the parent.
Or some other topic.
Keep scrolling if you hate animals.
For all our accounts, we found that TikTok draws users in at first by serving a wide variety of videos, many with millions of views. Then, as the algorithm sees what you respond to, the selection of videos and the view counts can get lower and lower, with fewer of them vetted by moderators to see if they violate TikTok's terms of service. We reviewed our experiment and its results with the data.
Thank you. One thing I want to point out is that because this video is talking about, difficult content, there are many references to suicide towards the end. Just FYI, be aware of that. But I just want to, so we have, this is part of an activity we would use with students. So some of the questions are, what are the benefits of a social media platform serving you content that they know you will engage or react to? So go ahead and unmute and just, what are the benefits of TikTok understanding you so well, or thinking they do?
They make money off keeping you engaged.
Yes. So money is, my whole presentation could be this all equals money. And, but again, a really, really important thing to talk to young people about. This is not just, for their benefit, like their data is being used. It's for selling you things. It's for understanding your buying habits, etc.
I think like my daughter's using it and makes money, and she does a book review. So for her, when they were getting rid of it, it was like, this is an income source for me.
Yeah.
Well, this is a way I am reaching out, and she gets books all the time from all over the country and just does book reviews.
Yeah. Well, and again, I mean, I think with so much of this, so much of it is so positive, in making connections, or, if you're a very, very isolated kid in a school that doesn't have a gay straight alliance, let's say, that you can go online or find it on social media. I mean, there's so many benefits. But, with that comes a lot of danger as well. And I don't think we would convince kids to get off of this anyway, even if we wanted to.
I'm not sure we should.
Yeah, no, I don't think
it's a double-edged sword. They just need to, students and kids just need to know that in a way they are the product. And if they know that in a way they can be manipulated, once you're aware of how you're being manipulated, that becomes more difficult.
Right. So the algorithm is sort of learning from you, and you're learning from the algorithm, and you're kind of continuing it. But being aware of these things, I think, is the most important. What are some of the drawbacks of this? I mean, we kind of hinted about it, but what are the drawbacks of social media platforms that serve you content that really is only curated for you?
It spirals.
In what sense?
If you fixate on something that isn't true, then you start seeing more content that isn't true, and it spirals out of control rather quickly.
Right. And you start drowning out or putting blinders on to all the other options, and it just narrows and narrows. And I mean, we've been talking a lot about, building empathy with young people. And, a big piece of that is even, using literature and hearing other people's stories and connecting with those. And with this, it makes it very difficult because, again, you're only hearing from people who think like you or want you to think a certain way, etc. If you don't mind hitting play again, Christy, we're just going to watch a few more minutes of this.
A scientist, an algorithm expert, and Guillaume Chasleau, a former Google engineer who worked on YouTube's algorithm. He's now an advocate for algorithm transparency. He says TikTok is different from other social media platforms.
The algorithm on TikTok can get much more powerful, and it can be able to learn your vulnerabilities much faster.
In fact, TikTok fully learned many of our account's interests in less than 2 hours. Some it figured out in less than 40 minutes.
On YouTube, more than 70% of the views come from the recommendation engine. So it's already huge, but on TikTok, it's even worse. It's probably like 90–95% of the content that is seen that comes from the recommendation engine.
The pictures on your phone are photo books just waiting to be made. Give us your photo.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I don't see. You see where I could skip?
Photos and our free 24-hour designer service.
Okay, there we go.
This is a visualization made from hashtags attached to the videos our bots watched. Think of it as a partial view of the universe of TikTok content. Here's where we found dance videos. Over here are the cooking videos. The spindly arms stretching out of the center represent niche content areas. This arm starts with general videos of cute animals. But if we follow it out to the end, we find more specific videos for enthusiasts of French bulldogs. As Kentucky 96 starts its journey, it starts moving around within the mainstream, where TikTok is trying to puzzle out what it wants. We programmed Kentucky 96 to be interested in sadness and depression. Let's see how long it takes TikTok to figure that out.
Life doesn't happen to you, life happens for you. So if life is taking people away from your life and putting new ones in.
Less than 3 minutes into using TikTok, at its 15th video, Kentucky 96 pauses on this.
And that love goes for a friend, family, or any relationship.
Kentucky 96 watches the 35-second video twice. Here, TikTok gets its first inkling that perhaps the new user is feeling down lately.
Whoever comes, let them come. Whoever stays, let them stay. Whoever goes, let them go.
The information contained in this single video provided the app with important clues. The author of the video, the audio track, the video description, the hashtags. After Kentucky 96's first sad video, TikTok serves another one 23 videos later, or after about 4 more minutes of watching.
I'll leave you alone from now on if that's what you want.
This one is a breakup video with the hashtag sad.
You know why I leave you alone? Because I care about your feelings more than mine.
TikTok's still trying to suss out this new user with more high view count videos. Does the new user want to watch videos about friendship? Or to laugh at funny fail videos?
Nobody's gonna know. They're gonna know.
Or do they like videos about home repairs? Other information from your phone, including location, can impact the videos that are shown in a user's feed.
As a Kentuckian, I never thought I'd lose my freedom over a virus.
For instance, Kentucky 96 saw lots about Kentucky, but whether or not it keeps showing you that type of video depends on your response to it. A TikTok spokeswoman said the app does not listen to your microphone or read text messages to serve you personalized videos. At video 57, Kentucky 96 keeps watching a video about heartbreak and hurt feelings. And then, at video 60, watches one about emotional pain. Based on the videos rewatched so far, TikTok thinks that maybe this user wants to see more about love, breakups, and dating. So at about 80 videos and 15 minutes in, the app starts serving more about relationships. But Kentucky 96 isn't interested.
Your voice, your smile, your eyes, your laugh.
The user instead pauses on one about mental health. Then quickly swipes past videos about missing an ex.
I miss you, and I like having you around.
Advice about moving on, and how to hold a lover's interest.
He spends more time on his phone when he's around you.
Kentucky 96 lingers over this video containing the hashtag depression.
Something's wrong with me.
And these videos about suffering from anxiety.
is like a reward.
After 224 videos into the bot's overall journey, or about 36 minutes of total watch time, TikTok's understanding of Kentucky 96 takes shape. Videos about depression and mental health struggles outnumber those about relationships and breakups. From here on, Kentucky 96's feed is a deluge of depressive content. 93% of videos shown to the account are about sadness or depression.
People been looking at me. I'm just like, what you looking at?
A TikTok spokeswoman said that some of the remaining 7% of videos are to help the user discover different content. But for Kentucky 96, such videos were few and far between. The majority of videos it was shown outside of its depressive rabbit hole were ads. A TikTok spokeswoman said that the simulated activity generated by the Wall Street Journal's bots is not representative of real user behavior because humans have a diverse set of interests. But even some of our accounts with diverse interests rabbit holed. We showed our data and many of the videos seen by Kentucky 96 to Shazlo.
What we see on TikTok is a bit the same that what we saw on YouTube. So basically the algorithm is detecting that this depressing content is useful to create engagement and pushes depressing content. So the algorithm is pushing people towards more and more extreme content so it can push them toward more and more watch time.
TikTok also says it allows you to see less of something by selecting the not interested button. But Shazlo says that's not enough.
The algorithm is able to find the piece of content that you're vulnerable to, that will make you click, that will make you watch. But it doesn't mean you really like it, and that's the content that you enjoy the most. It's just the content that's the most likely to make you stay on the platform.
Our bots only escaped rabbit holes when we changed their viewing interests. When we told one bot to stop watching videos about ADHD, the algorithm cut back on that content. Still, many of the journal's bots were rapidly pushed deep into rabbit holes. TikTok learned our bots' most far-flung interests, like astrology. But even bots with general mainstream interests got pushed to the margins as their recommendations got more personalized and narrow. Bots with an interest in sexual content wound up way out here, watching #KingTalk videos about sexual power dynamics. And our bot with a general interest in politics wound up being served videos about election conspiracies and QAnon.
First order of business is impeach Biden and Kamala. It goes from the House to the Senate.
Deep in the niche worlds of TikTok, users are more likely to encounter potentially harmful content that is less vetted by moderators and violates the app's terms of service.
Make them angry and sad. They would be so much happier without you.
A TikTok spokeswoman said that the company catches a lot of banned content, which passes through both computer analysis and human moderators. It also reviews videos reported by users.
Go. Don't tell them goodbye, just go.
It's night time.
There's a lot of fun, silly, and life-affirming content on TikTok. But while TikTok can draw out what makes you laugh, it can also make you wallow in your darkest thoughts.
Turning the pain from mental to physical work.
Without ever needing to eavesdrop on you or collect any personal information about you.
I've never attempted suicide or anything. I've never let it get that far.
Whether it's on TikTok, on Facebook, on YouTube, we're interacting with algorithm in our everyday life more and more. We are training them and they're training us. So we have to study this so we understand it better and we don't let it go in directions that are harmful to society or to certain groups of people.
Thank you. So obviously that was a very extreme and very dark example.
No one seems to know this, but Amazon actually has.
If we could just go, to the PowerPoint, thank you. But I think showing young people and talking about how this manipulates your viewership and your connection to your phone. And these are just some of the questions that we had as part of this lesson. And really, again, looking at what does this do to society? What does this do to democracy? I mean, certainly you can talk a lot about how this has impacted elections, and I'm sure we'll continue to. So yeah, if you could go to the next one, thank you. So this is again from Snyder. Believe in truth. To abandon facts is to abandon freedom. If nothing is true, then no one can criticize power because there is no basis upon which to do so. If nothing is true, then all is spectacle. The biggest wallet pays for the most blinding lights. Clearly, there's no connection to what we're seeing right now in this quote. I mean, this is so much of what we're seeing. And I think, again, talking to young people about conspiracy theories and QAnon and all kinds of content that they're going to be seeing and being able to, you know, hopefully deconstruct it. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So this is something I just wanted to show you. You can click on it and then scroll down. This was from the National Association for Media Literacy Education. And so, yeah, perfect. So asking young people to look at, like, who are the authors? What is the purpose? Who paid for this? What is the content? What are the, you know, what emotions does it elicit? I think this is a wonderful, wonderful handout. And I think it would be very easy, you know, as a classroom exercise to go through this. Thank you. If you can go to the next, which I think is my last slide. Another piece that I really liked. So we also have a specific lesson about disinformation and misinformation. And just these very simple tools to use with young people about, you know, determining how credible something is. So examining the source, lateral reading, find the original clip, keyword search. And then I found on this group MediaWise, there's a teen fact checking network. And if you could just click the link, Christy, thank you, and scroll down. So it is young people and they go through some claim. So they're all youth journalists and they examine the source and then they kind of break it down. So what was the original clip? She did a keyword search. She found out where the source was. Again, lateral reading, and the rating not legit. So I thought this was a great thing again. And I think you can also sign up to be a youth reviewer. So I think that would be a great activity with your students, or, you know, if you had high school students. And I think that is the end of my piece of this, and I will turn it back over.
Great. Thank you, Nina. Really wonderful, I think, extension to a very light touching on of algorithms earlier in mine too. And that TikTok video was so helpful, so scary, so helpful. So thank you for sharing that. So I think before we go to Q&A, just a really brief kind of wrap up on digital citizenship. That was in the title, I think, of the webinar. So maybe you've been waiting for that. But essentially all that Nina and I have been presenting on has to do with digital citizenship, which is basically the ability to use technology responsibly, safely, and respectfully. And that excellent source that Nina just shared in the previous slide for how to critically assess you know, a social media source is excellent. And I guess there are lessons that that Woven Foundation has developed also that teachers can draw on, which is wonderful. So great resources for you all moving forward if you want to spend some time on this with your learners. Basically, digital citizenship is referring to the ability to protect private information online. We know that's a concern, the right to privacy, to mitigate risks associated with cyber threats. So again, freedom, we know that there's the right to information, but there's also the right to security, really, and to utilize information in a respectful, knowledgeable, and legal way. And I know when I first heard the term digital citizenship, I thought, oh, well, it's about activism online. But this is really, the way we're using it in this context is really, as you might imagine, is to really to make sure that we're as educated as we can be about what we need to be cautious about, but also what we can take advantage of in terms of the use of AI and social media, and similarly with our students. And the curriculum that I will be able to share in about, I guess again, in about a month's time, just to tell you the 6 lessons, and we didn't have them on this in this webinar because they're not available yet, but they cover, for example, what is AI, the basics. It looks at ethical principles for understanding how to assess the pros and cons, or the opportunities and risks of using AI, but specifically from a human rights perspective. It's also a light introduction to human rights. So if you are looking for a way, also a door to introduce the basics of human rights to your learners in something that's really content rich, that particular lesson will do exactly that. And then it moves into thinking about governance issues in AI. This is also something for all of us to keep our eyes on, not only us being able to, really look critically at AI uses, et cetera, but to look out and to see who's out there in terms of organizations, governments, helping us to understand, what are good idea, which are principled uses of AI, and also for developers to also understand their own limits, and to the degree that external to the corporations and companies making AI, that they might be sensitive to that. So far, not so much, because it's really a race now. But anyway. And then the other lessons have to do with an example of AI, a text generated by AI versus student written, to help students understand what is the difference, and again, on the right to education, and finally some research that can be done on the use of AI, not only in education, but in policing, in the health services, so many aspects of our life in the public sector is now integrating AI. So to help our learners and ourselves to understand how AI is potentially being used or actually being used in all these other sectors, again, including health and military use and police, etc. Okay, so let's, if we can, click on this link, Christy. Thank you. We're going to have a short video on.
With Canva, it's so easy. It allows me to make my presentations a lot faster.
To make positive change and engage in a community well beyond borders. Digital citizen is more than a title. Like the saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility. A good digital citizen uses technology responsibly and appropriately. Just like being a citizen of your local community or country, there are guidelines and expectations that a digital citizen should live by. You may not realize it, but whenever you use the internet, you leave behind a digital footprint. That means that every time you leave a comment, share a post, send an email or message, use an app, or browse the internet, you're leaving a trail of your online history. This history has the potential to be seen by others, family and peers, teachers, college admission officers, and even future employers. It can also be tracked in an online database. Now, this footprint isn't like one in the sand that quickly gets washed away. A digital footprint follows you for the rest of your life. So consider how you want to represent yourself online. Take a moment to think before you post. Ask yourself, is it kind? Will it hurt someone? Are you sharing too much information? Does it follow good etiquette? And would you normally say or share this in person? Digital citizens also make safety a top priority when using technology. Would you walk around town carrying a sign with all of your personal information on it, like your full name, date of birth, phone number, or address? No! So you shouldn't do so online. To protect your identity, some good safety measures include making your social media accounts private, never sharing your account passwords with anyone, and not clicking on suspicious pop-ups, links, or emails. You can also protect yourself by not accepting friend or follow requests from people you don't know, some of whom may be out to do more harm than good. Digital citizens are critical thinkers and have good media literacy skills. Technology helps to make information instantaneous, yes, but this has made it difficult to know what sources of information are credible and which ones are fake news. Here are some ways you can spot the fakers. Pay attention to the URL. If it ends in .lo or .com, .co, chances are it's not a legitimate news site. Analyze the article. Grammatical errors, incorrect dates, bold claims with no sources, and sensational images are some big giveaways that the information may not be true. Dig deeper. Learn more about the author of the article and the publishing source. Do they have inherent biases like corporate ties or political affiliations? If authoring information is missing altogether, then that is another red flag. Cross-check the information. Go to fact-checking websites to see if other credible news sources are reporting similar information. Do a reverse image search. This trick can reveal if a photo has been altered or has been used in an unrelated story. Being able to recognize what news is legitimate and what isn't will not only make you more informed, but it will also reduce the spread of misinformation. Okay, so let's recap. What does it mean to be a good digital citizen? Well, much like your reputation, preserve your digital footprint. Exercise safe practices to protect yourself and your identity. Be mindful of the information you share and who you share it with. Be kind and follow the golden rule. Treat others how you want to be treated. Help others who may have less access to technology so they can also have good media literacy skills. Think carefully. Don't take information at face value. Analyze the source of the information to determine if it's legitimate or not. As technology and our access to it continues to evolve, it's always important to revisit and amend what it means to be a digital citizen. What other qualities make up a good digital citizen? Let us know in the comment section below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more Things Explained.
Thanks. I know that was a review probably for some of you. And I see that Garth had a really interesting comment about how you can think about your digital footprint in a positive way. So I just wanted to mention one more slide, the next one, Christy, and then we can go to Q&A. I'd love to hear what Garth thinks about, or how he might advise us to try to understand how we leave a digital footprint in such a way that it might be, promoting some of the, I guess, the ideals that we might have in regards to human rights. So last thing I just wanted to highlight, and Christy actually suggested that I bring this in, so I thank her for that, is just to say, back to the human rights side of things, that the UN Secretary General, needless to say, along with many other of our leaders, have recognized how important it is to think about all the things we've talked about and shared with you in this particular webinar, right? And human rights is the foundation of an open, safe, and secure digital future. So earlier on, I presented some of the human rights at stake around the use of AI, and I hope that I had some kind of, maybe not a full balance, but to say that there are trade-offs, right? And maybe not a trade-off, but there are positives. There's also things that are concerning, but it's not all doom and gloom with the use of AI, obviously. So, but we need to have human rights at the foundation of our ethical understanding, our critical understanding of how to use it. The other thing just to mention to you, for those of you who followed international human rights education policy, is that the 5th phase of the World Program for Human Rights Education continues with an engagement with youth, but also specifically sees as a target human rights and digital technologies. And there's some of these other areas as well. So this is really going to continue to attract the attention of policymakers, even at the United Nations. And again, I think in the area of governance, which we didn't talk about too much in this presentation, but I'm super interested in myself, the United Nations, I think it's UNESCO, has come out with some really good guidance on the use of digital technology and ethics, which intersects with human rights. And I think that they're working on an implementation guideline now, UNESCO, for how to use those competencies. So keep your eyes open for that. I guess I'll just leave it at that. And thank you very much for your attention. This is our email addresses. I left my Gmail one in the chat box earlier, but this is my Utrecht University one. And I didn't use I left my HREA email address earlier. This one will also work at Utrecht University. But we're gonna stop here. We do have 10 minutes left, which is not too bad. And just open up the floor for your comments, your experiences, your questions. I mean, this is a community of learners, as Nina said. like me as well, I'm still learning. I'm learning every day. We're just going to open it up. If you'd like to say something, please just feel free to open your mic and share. Thanks. And I would like Garth to explain a little bit about his, oh, you want the chat? Yeah, so maybe Nina, you and I can just write our email addresses in the chat box for Kelly and for everybody. Okay. And Garth, can I entice you to explain your
Well, I guess the picture is I was the guy who started the first one-to-one laptop program in Ohio. So I've been doing since 2001 with computers, so we don't do any paper. And so we started digital citizenship, became a huge part of the process and their legacy. What are they leaving behind? We've embedded human rights in the 7th grade curriculum. So we do a whole thing on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And ultimately, they build web pages. We have documentary movies. We have things online where they're interviewing professors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so at the end of the year, they can stamp the wall if they've left a positive digital footprint. So that's kind of a big deal for them. A lot of them, when they graduate, they come back and take a picture of their little foot on the wall. But it's pretty big. It's a big wall. But the whole process is creating, I mean, you mentioned ethics. We do a ton with like copywriting imagery and how, what is legal and how to use Creative Commons. And so it's a lot of ethical discussion as well. I'm a 7th grade social studies teacher, so it's very equitable because every kid that goes through my school district has my class. So, every student that goes through is dealing with this. So that's kind of where it's at, I guess.
Excellent. So Garth, a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind. First is that when you're talking about ethics with your students or the school, which makes sense, do you bring in human rights? I'm curious. And secondly, since you actually have so much experience in this area, I wondered if you have anything to add to supplement what Nina and I presented, which was, fairly basic. Please feel free.
Well, human rights we added as a part. It was about 7 years ago. We went to the board and asked to add it to our curriculum to make it personal. So the human rights is in 6th grade, they do the Declaration of Human Rights. In 7th grade, we have 5 different projects where they pick historical events that have had an impact on human rights. One of my favorite was they did the Japanese internment, and we found here in Cleveland a woman who had been in an internment camp. And the kids found her. She came in and had a conversation with them about what that was like. We found her by finding an image of her ID online. And so then we kind of backtraced it, kind of what you were talking about with imagery and kind of looking. We backtraced. Then we found a documentary on YouTube about her from her grandson. And they mentioned where she lived. So then the next thing we got a hold of her and she came in. And so there's been some pretty unique ones. I mean, it is interesting. We had another student 2 years ago that did theirs on the Loving case because her parents were one was Black, one was white. So she wanted to do the research of the Loving case and understand what an impact that it had and how that's a human right, as well. So I don't know. I mean, I'm actually leaving social studies this year, and I'm going to go to an all-computer class of media literacy. Basically, everything you talked about is what I'll be teaching next year is media literacy, how to tell truth from fiction, as well as algorithms, how they work, how that all plays out. Like it'll be a computer science class, but human rights may be a part of that for next year. I'm just not sure. I'm kind of playing around. I get to design whatever I want to do, so I'm just playing.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Great.
Yep.
Good luck.
I think we have time for maybe one more question, and then Christy's going to close it out. Is that right?
Any other question or comment, reflection? Someone put something in the chat box here. Yes, there's actually, I think there's a special rapporteur on the right to the internet has been trying to, again, on this, based on this concern that having access to the internet, which of course is a precursor for having access to AI, is in the contemporary world is a human right, because otherwise you are disadvantaged in terms of your lack of in terms of your access to information. So actually the right to the internet, I think that language is being used. I don't think it's actually in any kind of binding human rights standard, but the language is being used for obvious reasons. And it's cool to see that Estonia has actually recognized that. But they're very hooked up in Estonia to the internet, so I'm not surprised that they'd be kind of out in front in terms of thinking about human rights and access to the internet. Okay. Thank you. HRE Collections. Christy, maybe this is a good time to give it back to you. Then tell us what that is, and maybe we can wrap up.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you very much to Felisa and Neela for their fantastic presentations tonight. I think the resources were great. So thank you, everyone. A round of applause. I just dropped in the Human Rights Education collections. Most recently, we had put together a collection around mis and disinformation during the election year. But I think some of us have been talking about how it would be good to probably pull together a collection around artificial intelligence or digital technologies in the HRE. So we will definitely be following up by sending you all the recording and the slides, as well as some of the extra resources that we've started. But I know that many of you are actually doing this, and Garth, particularly, I think everyone would probably love to see your lessons if you want to share them. And I'll mention that we have started a pilot group called Human Rights Learning Collaborative, where we have a space on our Google Drive where people can create or share their lessons around specific topics. So if anyone's interested in sharing some of the work you've been doing on any topics, but AI in particular, feel free to reach out to me and we can bring you into the pilot. That would be fantastic. And I'm going to drop in here the eval. Yes, here we go. The eval before you leave, if you don't mind just completing that, it's going to be very useful for us as we try to continue to think about what other webinars would be useful in the future as we think about our TAAS 2025-26 series. But I should drop in also here. Our next session will be February 24th, and that session will be around international youth solidarity and looking at children's rights and youth voice. And I can drop that link in as well. I don't know if we want to just go around with a quick one-word, thought, reaction from what this session was, so that everyone has an opportunity to just bounce around and feel free to jump in.
I would say enlightening.
Thank you.
I was going to use the word invigorated or invigorating.
I would say mindful.
I would say inspiring at this difficult, challenging time. It's good to be inspired and to feel hopeful. So thank you.
I feel behind, but I'm going to race to catch up. So thank you too.
Mine is eager to continue learning and continuing the work.
Well, mine is thought-provoking, all of these. It has my wheels turning, and as you all have kind of said, around inspiration and inspiring. Felisa and Nina, do you want to add before you leave any last words?
Just thank you to Christy and HRE USA for putting this together and inviting us. I had a great time working on it, and it's wonderful talking to people who are, you know, out there grappling with these issues and helping young people or learners understand them and make good choices. So, and I can use some hope today. So this was very positive.
Yeah, thank you, Christy and HRE USA, and everybody for coming out tonight, and for those who are watching this recording. Just hang in there, because AI is here to stay, and we are as well. And we just need to be in the driver's seat as much as we can. So this webinar is just a kind of drop in the bucket for our learning. And as Nina and I have said, we're also still learners. And that is not a cliche. It is absolutely the case, because things are changing so fast. So don't be discouraged if you're at the beginning of learning. You know, that's perfectly fine. You just want to be as active as you can, and bring your students along with you. And Garth, thank you so much for your sharing in particular. I was very inspired by what you're doing, and good luck with your, you know, moving into computer science. I guess I would never give social studies for that, but I'm very excited that you're doing that.
Well, 31 years, and I've decided I'm kind of bored. I've done a lot. It's time to try something else. Same school, new kids. We'll see.
Yeah. Great.
Well, and I also want to thank all of our 20 co-sponsors that have really helped this Training as Action series continue, and all of you who are doing the good work in the fields. And so thank you so much. And we hope that we might see some of you on February 24th as well. So wish you well and have a wonderful evening. And thank you again, Nina.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.